Hello, everybody. Today we'll be talking about Roland Barthes' contribution to cultural studies. Um, I will briefly touch upon his life and his legacy, and then we will have a look at semiologic process and apply semiology into a few examples, the way Barthes did. And also, as an assignment, I will ask you to have a look at a surprise activity. So let's start. Yes, we will start with world famous sign signifier and the signified as key terms that we constantly use while reading and studying the work of Barthes. Um, if you have a look at the sign on the right hand side, one way, okay, you see the sign, like the traffic sign, yes, but also from semiological perspective, you divide this traffic sign into three main areas that make this traffic sign a sign. So the three entities we use while taking this cultural artifact or literary artifact that contains meaning are sign, signified, and signifier. Now the sign is the inseparable combination of the signifier and the signified. So we need, because this is a self-descriptive term, we have to look at what the terms signified and signifier mean. Signified is the meaning we associate with the sign, the idea or thing that the signifier represents. So we need the other term in order to understand the signified, which is the physical form of the sign as we perceive it through our senses, an image, object, or word being referred to. Now, the signifier here in this example is the physical form. That is to say, an arrow, a thick one, a white one, and one way, the letters in English. It is this system, this representation is organized into a black base, which makes it a traffic sign. So the signifier here is the combination of all these colors and shapes and letters and so on. The signified here is the idea. That is to say, so it might mean you have to go this way, but this way is one way. This also might mean that you are on a road rather than a forest. Okay, so these are the signified. So the sign here is, as you can see, open to contestation, open to interpretations. And you have to be within that community to understand this. That is to say, if you show this sign to a person, let's say living in the outskirts of Himalaya mountains, he or she might not codify or understand, decode what this message is about. So basically, we will start from this point of departure, because this is what Barthes focused on. That is what Barthes problematized. So we have to understand who Barthes was. He lived between the years of 1915 and 1980, and he is the man of semiotics. And his theory, his semiotic theory, has inspired numerous studies and numerous researchers in the fields of sociology, history, literature, and cultural studies. His main focus was the signs. Signs are multitude in number. They range from speech to body language or symbols that we see in paintings, music, sculpture, daily life, popular culture, everyday life, and so on. Yes, it's easier to talk about signs as composed of signs, signifiers, and signified ones. But when it comes to ideological, that is to say, value-based, value-driven, or abstract concepts, it is rather more difficult to talk about the meaning we infer from such signs. Barthes believed that every ideological sign, that is to say, when we say ideological sign, let's say the cover of this bottle of cologne, okay, and or whatever is written here on a small box of band-aids, okay, or terms such as democracy or religion or sexuality or hairstyle, okay. These ideological signs are either composed of a denotative sign system or a connotative sign system. Now, a denotative sign is composed of a descriptive system, and it is the result of the signifier image and the signified concept combining. Okay? So it is rather easier to understand such ideological signs from a denotative sign perspective. But a connotative sign is one that has lost its historical meaning. That is to say, it is more open to interpretation. It is not really tangible. It is not really recognizable at times. The problem with the connotative sign system is that such loss of meaning may be due to a number of things, including changes in culture or terminology or an event or even just evolution. That is to say, the objects we used hundreds of years ago do not carry the same meanings as we give to them as we infer from them today. So when you look at a notebook, for instance, from a denotative and connotative sign system, okay, for instance, of course, there are differences between Ay, kedi koltuğu parçalıyordu. Çocuklar kediye şey fırlattım, silgi fırlattım. Neyse. Kusura bakmayın, böyle şeyler oluyor, bu işte online derslerin şeyi. Tekrar özür dilerim. So if you look at the book, the notebook as a from a denotative and connotative sign system perspective, what can we say? Well, we can stop the video here and start thinking about it for 1 or 2 minutes before I, start talking about how I perceive it. So this notebook, okay, might mean just about anything from many different perspectives, but let's stick to a very easy one. Like 100 years ago, if you carried a notebook, it meant that you were literate and you were knowledgeable, you were an expert. And in such a community, you had to have it with you, right? But today, if you carry a notebook with you, this type of notebook, that is to say, the one, like my notebooks, okay, like a very traditional one, in communities such as, technologically advanced individuals who want to appear with their, Mac computers and so on, because they are, they are members of online communities, whereas you represent the old world. Okay, this is sort of a representation, a symbol of, or a sign of the fact that you are elderly, you are less competent in technology, and at times out of use. Okay, so we need some certain keywords to conduct such inferences, to come up with such ideas. The term connotative, for instance, connotative sign system, that we talked about them already. A denotative and denotative sign system, again, we talked about them. The term ideology refers to the knowledge presented as common sense or natural, especially when its social construction is ignored or suppressed. So oftentimes, that is to say, any sort of relationship, mental relationship, has some ideological background. That is to say, everything is ideological in our hands, and everything is ideological in our heads. Myth, from the perspective of Barthes, is purely the connotative meaning that signs carry wherever they go. So a myth is something that makes things look, appear, sound, feel natural, normal. Okay, that is to say, for instance, the myth of, for instance, one man marrying a woman in many corners of the world, especially in the West, is the myth, right? I'm not talking about adultery, fornication, and so on. I'm talking about, marriage is between one man and one woman. But in many Islamic regions, more than polygamy is might be the norm, not is the norm, but might be the norm. And so we have in our mental sets myths surrounding marriage. Okay, of course, the example I provided is not valid for many parts of the Western world, because now that there are homosexual or gay marriages available, permittable for partners of the same sex. So we have the myth, ideology, and myth that make everything sound or look or feel all right, natural. And there are meanings, various meanings. So meaning from the perspective of Barthes is never innocent. So when you interpret it especially, it is never innocent. Because there is no such thing as pure, uncoded, objective experience. Every single artifact or mental image or value is loaded with values, ideas, historical details, and so on. So codes and signs are not universal, they are cultural, they are culture specific. Even within one culture, there are a variety of interpretations because codes and signs differ from one generation to another, or from one geographical location to another. That is to say, all in all, meaning is manufactured out of historically shifting systems of codes. These codes might be social, cultural, historical, gender-based, power-related, and so on. Now, semiotic theory is an interpretive theory that can be applied to most aspects of everyday life, although most people would not realize it. Myths are forms of popular culture from the perspective of Barthes, but are more than this. They form a meta-language inclusive of various languages. In that sense, myth is a second-order semiological system, so it needs first-order systems. First-order systems are something that we name things. For instance, this is a pen, this is a pencil, whereas this is a pen, or these are reading glasses, and so on. Okay, but a myth is a second-order semiological system which uses the information provided by this first-order system. Okay, so myths use these and prepare a worldview, a way of looking at things, so on. For instance, you need a pen, you need reading glasses if you have to use a pen or pencil adequately if you are at the age of 47 and working as a professor. Let's focus on the case of the rose. Now we are moving from the first order system to the second one, that is to say, from the tangible understanding to the myth-making procedure or perspective. Now the rose, as you can see the visual here, is a vision, first of all. You have to see it, or someone has to say, someone has to use the word rose, the rose. In order to understand this sign, decode this sign, you need the knowledge of horticulture or nature. You have to know, you have to differentiate between a rose and a periwinkle, for instance. If you have some knowledge of religion, Islam, for instance, you might associate it with Prophet Muhammad. Or if you have knowledge of Christianity, you could associate it with the Virgin Mary. But if you are very much related with sexuality, then a rose could mean or make you think of passionate love and sexual desire. So with the help of myths, we move from semiology to ideology, okay? What is accepted and what is not. Barthes studied 70 women novelists as mothers, okay? He saw somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, he saw a picture of or some news about 70 women novelists who are mothers. So according to Barthes, the photo and the caption denote women novelists as mothers. So the photo shows them as, both novelists and mothers. And the caption writes as such: But if you look at this sign system carefully, with the photo, with the caption and the letters combined, you have the connotative meaning. The connotation is that the primary, natural, and inevitable role of women is being mothers. Okay? So you infer from this photo that, wait a second, okay? Women novelists, okay, so talk about their work, talk about their texts. Why are you talking about their sex? Because the ideological rundown of this photo and caption and the letters and everything is that this photo tries to justify, tries to show women novelists as their primary duty being a mother rather than a writer. So you could be a novelist, of course, but first you are a mother, and that makes your existence worthwhile. That's why you are in the news, not because you are a novelist, but because you are a novelist who happens to be a mother. So motherhood or being a mother is prioritized in this message, according to Barthes. So according to Barthes, the author is dead. So we as readers and viewers are alive, thank goodness, and we interpret. So that's why we interpret the texts, which are polysemic. They're open to interpretation, but not all interpretations are acceptable. That is to say, well, if you see, for instance, if you see a gun in the photo of running water, then that's your problem. I don't know how are you going to justify this, support the view that you see a gun there. However, it still shows that there is a lack of empirical validation in such studies because such analysis lacks or disregards the effect of the context, and such analysis equally lacks, disregards the effect of the production, this whole production system. So this is the activity time. We are running short in time. We are almost, we have only 2 minutes left. So the activity is about Hey dergisi. This magazine, Hey, comes from my childhood. So here, the task of yours is to study these covers from by reading them semiologically from the perspective of masculinity and manhood. Okay, try to look at the titles, subheadings, or caption and photos and so on, and try to tell me these covers coming from 1980s and early 1990s, how what each part of these photos tell you about the caption, the photo, the message, the meaning, and so on, and try to understand how a semiological work is conducted. So we will talk about these in the forum. I will put a section there to talk about this activity. Keep safe. I love you. Bye-bye.